All right, starting the YouTube stream early here. So, I don't think Andy's in here yet, but all right. Good evening. This is W2NDG in Highland. Is this frequency in use? Once again, this is Neil, W2NDG in Highland, starting the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's Sunday night Science and Technology Net. Let's pause for any emergency or priority traffic. Nothing heard. Well, we hams in the Hudson Valley meet here on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. to discuss science and technology, sometimes how it relates to ham radio, but not always. It's a very wide variety and broad topics that we bring up. I come here every Sunday at 8 p.m. and usually here with my co-host, Jim K2BHM. I'm going to see if Jim is there. And if so, we do have an interesting topic tonight that I'm going to suggest, and we'll see where it goes. So, Jim, K2BHM, are you around tonight?
I'm here, K2BHM. If I don't come right back, I'm eating. So I'll be clearing my mouth out.
All right, that's fine. And I'll go off on a monologue a little bit before we get going here. But once again, you are tuned to 146.805 if you're listening to us on the repeater. And to get into the repeater, you're going to transmit on a frequency of 146.205, which is a minus 600 kilohertz offset. And you're going to need a PL tone of 103.5 hertz. Also, we are streaming on YouTube, and you can watch on YouTube and put forth comments. And you can do that by simply searching for W2NDG Science and Technology. And you should find my YouTube channel there. Nothing special, nothing fantastic, just me holding a mic and talking. Really riveting. Anyway, before I see who else is out there tonight, let's ramp up with what I'm going to suggest as a topic tonight, and it is science and Hollywood. Frequently, Hollywood does a lot of guessing on science and technology, and for the purposes of entertainment, sometimes the stretching of the facts of science and technology. But every now and then, they also get it right. And what I had said earlier on one of the earlier nets is we can look at this from 3 points of view. We can look at it as movies that Hollywood got the science terribly wrong, movies that Hollywood got the science right, and old movies where the science has changed. Some of them hold up entertainment-wise, and some of them don't. And we can look at that from all different angles. I will accept the mention of TV shows, as long as they're not totally obscure one-off TV shows, but something that people have heard of. And we can discuss that as well. But think of your examples. We'll do round robin directed net like we usually do. But then I'll probably open it up. Once again tonight, though, I don't want to run much past 9 o'clock. I've spent the whole weekend at Stormville, and I am rather tired and wouldn't mind getting to bed at a decent hour tonight. So, but let's get going. I want to talk about the things I found out searching for this on the internet a little bit. Let me drop. Some very simple Google searches are going to get you interesting results and plenty of reading material. And, you could easily search for something like worst scientifically inaccurate Hollywood movies, or movies that are scientifically inaccurate. You'll find lots of lists and explanations. Then you can also search for movies that are scientifically accurate, and you'll also get um, some good readable results from that. What's interesting and what you'll find is that there are movies that are on both lists, movies that get a lot of things wrong, but also get some interesting things right. Um, for the old films, some of them will be on one list or the other, but this is more trivia. We can just bring stuff up like that. But you will find some really neat stuff. Um, I'll mention, one of the films that's on both lists is Jurassic Park. um, there's a movie that people seem to think got some things right and a couple of major things wrong. There were a couple others, and some surprising ones. Something may be quite fictional, but still get some of the science right. Let me drop. One of the TV shows that I'll bring up is one of my favorites as far as the science. And it's a modern TV show, science fiction TV, based on a book series that I've read. And it's The Expanse. If you haven't read the books, I recommend them. If you haven't seen the TV show, I recommend it. Not only is it an interesting series based on the science behind it, and I'll explain in a moment, but it's also one of the better adaptations of the book. If you read the book and then watch the series, you will actually be quite impressed as to how well they got it right. So, but what's special about that series? Let me drop. So, in the books and in the TV show, one of the things that you'll notice is that they don't invent technology to make things easy. And what I mean by that is when you watch Star Trek and a number of other, science fiction shows and movies, we have things that make the story easy. Faster than light travel, faster than light communication, the ability to create artificial gravity or control gravity, the ability to control inertia, all sorts of things like that. But what if we didn't have any of that and we still wanted to explore and colonize the solar system? What would that look like? And that's what The Expanse is, up to the point that alien technology comes into the story. So now I'll give some examples. They can travel not even really close to the speed of light, but pretty fast. But when they do, they require special acceleration couches, drugs that automatically get injected into their systems so that they can survive high Gs. An entire subset of our civilization has evolved in low gravity in these colonies, and they have to be specially treated as children so that they can survive low gravity. And the side effect of all of this is that these people who grew up in the belt, as it's called in the series, can't visit Earth. They can't handle the gravity. And in the book, they actually make them a little physically different, which they don't do in the series, but they're much taller, they're much skinnier, and they have a couple of other different features. And it's interesting. But there's a lot about science in this that is more accurate than you would normally find. And there's one more really good example. Let me drop. Although it's not perfect, The Martian. And I do recommend the book first. It's an excellent book. I read it long before the movie came out. And it really does get into the science in the book behind how he manages to survive. And it's pretty good. There's a lot of other authors out there that really get into deep science when they write science fiction. Greg Bear is one that's famous for it. Stephen Baxter. There's a lot of them that really get into the science. Some of them get really, really deep into it, and you have to enjoy that sort of thing. And then, of course, there's the other side of that coin, where there are things that just there is no possibility. But what they kind of wave it off by saying, Well, it's warp drive. Well, it's inertial dampeners. Well, it's artificial gravity. All these things that we don't have. Well, maybe someday, but what if we don't? What if we never do? How does that look? So, anyway, that's my intro to tonight. Once again, this is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Let me drop. Let's see who else is out there tonight. So, check into the net. You're going to give me your call sign, your first name, and your location. Call sign, first name, and location. Please come now.
KB2, GGF, Matt in Kerhonkson.
KD2, KJU, Jed, West Hurley.
KD2, MNR, Mike, Poughkeepsie.
This is November 2 Foxtrot Zulu Charlie Tom in Fishkill.
This is KD2VAH, Jim.
All right, pretty good for first round. We have 6 total check-ins, so this should be good for some good, healthy discussion. I will take more check-ins after the first round. So, once again, you don't have to answer a specific question here, but you've heard what we're talking about. If for some reason you tuned in really late, just tell me that you want a quick synopsis. But, give me some examples you can think of good science in Hollywood, bad science in Hollywood, and if you have any trivia, what's an old, scientifically inaccurate movie or one that might have actually gotten something right? What do you like from days of yore? Are you a big Robbie the Robot fan? All right, Jim, K2BHM, let's start off with you and see how you like tonight's subject.
Well, this is Jim, K2BHM. This particular topic is, you kind of caught me off guard. I'm not a movie fan. I see very little movies in my lifetime. Just never really got into it. I do have a couple of TV shows that might make a good example. On one side of the coin, you've got Big Bang Theory. If you're familiar with that, a bunch of geeks. And some of the references there were very interesting. Like one time the elevator door opened up and the elevator is broken. And they dropped something. And Leonard says, "Chunk, 30 feet." And I could see the math flying through my head. But he dropped a second. At that time, I worked at SUNY, running the machine shop, and I was surrounded by PhDs, and they got a kick out of it too, because when Sheldon would go and put up all that math on a whiteboard, we would talk about it the next day over coffee, and all of the math up there was correct. It was all valid theories, and everything all made sense, and everything followed. So that was an example of some good editing. And then on the other side of the coin, we've got the CSI programs. My wife sees them as serious dramas. I see them as comedies, because the science that they put out there is so ridiculous. They never get 1/10 of it right. And since they went from physics to math, or not math, medicine, she's laughing now too. So she sees their fallacies in the medical world. And that's about it for me, K2BHM.
All right, Jim. A couple of comments here. Big Bang Theory. Yeah, I did catch a lot of interesting stuff when I was watching it. Did you ever see the ham radio equipment in any of the shots of the apartment?
No, I didn't notice that. There was so many other things to catch my eye.
Yeah, there's a really old piece. I forget what it is on the shelf behind them when they're showing the view, on the couch. The shelf that had all the interesting stuff on it. And then in a number of views, there's a rather large, I think it's a Yaesu transceiver on its side in the room, like over on the other side of the room when they show another angle. It was there for a lot of the shows. And I've seen some banter back and forth about what it actually is. There are people who do this stuff. But yes, there's definitely a lot of stuff in there and a lot of inside jokes that are meant for people who do this for a living. So, yes, I'll give you that. And okay, medical shows. So if your wife likes to pick apart those, how did she feel about House?
I don't know. I don't think she watched it that much, but I was basically looking at CSI from the physics of it when they were into that stuff. They had something where they were trying to figure out if this woman whose car got hit by a freight train basically went through on her own or was pushed, and they found a fragment of the filament from the headlight, and from that they were going to decide if the headlight was on or off, and they're determined whether she pulled into the front of the engine herself or was pushed. And my take on that, let me drop a second. They were going to put the filament fragment under an electron microscope and evaluate whether the headlight was on or off. But basically, we all know that once you break the glass envelope and oxygen hits the white hot tungsten, you've got tungsten oxide, and there's nothing to find. So the fact that they found a fragment of tungsten means that the headlight was off when the glass was broken. What do you need the electron microscope for? And then it goes downhill from there.
Good stuff. Yeah, we all find ourselves yelling at the TV every now and then. Yeah, stuff like that belongs. There was a Fox show called Fringe where they explore, the boundaries of science, which isn't really science most of the time. All right, thank you. Good stuff, Matt. KB2GGF. What are your contributions on this subject?
Good evening, Neil, and good evening, everybody. Glad to hear you all. When I heard the subject, I thought immediately of the Jodie Foster movie from 1997, Contact, based on the Carl Sagan book. And basically, Jodie is a SETI scientist, and they contact intelligent life out there. And then a large multi-government program is made to launch a vehicle and so forth. But anyhow, in the opening of the movie, let me drop it, they have a slow camera pullback from Earth, and you see the moon rush by, and then Mars, and the planets as they pull back. And the soundtrack from the Earth is radio and TV broadcasts from the modern day, the present time. And as you get out to the moon, it's like 10 years ago, and you get out to Mars, and it's 30 years ago, and you get out to the outer planets, and, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't take years for radio waves to get from the Earth to Jupiter. So that kind of put me off the movie right away when it started. But other than that, not a bad flick, entertaining, I guess, but kind of inaccurate. So that's what I thought of. Back to Ned, KB2GGF.
No, thanks, Matt. And yeah, Contact is one of those films that strays from the book enough, for purposes of entertainment. They definitely changed some things. But it is an interesting movie, and yes, there's definitely things in there that are accurate, and plenty of things that are not. Um, and as with a lot of these movies, like I was saying with the Expanse, the things that don't make sense are the things that were provided to us by aliens, basically. Um, so that's how they cover the science that we don't understand. Um, Here's an interesting thing about that movie. I'll throw back to you. Um, there's ham radio in that movie, correct?
By golly, yes. That's why I thought it was an appropriate movie.
There are definitely movies with ham radio. There's more books with ham radio. And what's funny is that sometimes it's just mentioned in a book, and it's usually, they usually get it completely wrong as to what it is and what it's used for. But, you know, there's definitely ham radio in movies and on TV here and there. Of course, we've talked before about the movie and the television series Frequency. I've actually never seen the TV show, but I've seen the movie. And one of the things that I always noticed in the movie is that, the kid doesn't have a license, and nobody's giving call signs. Um, besides the fact that they're, talking across time. I recently, not that recently, a few years ago, read a book by Neil Stevenson called Seven Eves, where ham radio plays an integral part, and it's accurate. He took the time to research a lot of it. It's not a huge part of the story, but it's there. Tim Allen's TV show, he's got the ham radio set up. Let me drop. And that comes from the producer of the show, John Amadeo, who is a ham, wanted them to write ham radio into the script. The entire stage crew for that show all went out and got their licenses. ICOM provided equipment for a real working station on the set. That station that you see in the show is actually a working ham radio station. And Tim Allen thought it was so cool that he went out and he got his ham license. So interesting stuff with that one. And there's definitely other places where ham radio does show up on TV and in Hollywood, but not very often and not very accurately. All right, Jed, KD2, KJU. What would you like to add to tonight's topic?
KJU. Yeah, that's really interesting that Tim Allen actually got his ticket. That's good to know. I always kind of was annoyed by that show. And yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of examples of ham radio. Just I think the first one I can remember was all you older people are gonna Gilligan's Island. I forget the name of the TV show, but wasn't that just a radio? And somehow they were trying to talk with it. I think that was my first example of a radio being misused in the or at least not being explained properly. But that I remember seeing that, and even as a kid, when I saw that, it just didn't make sense to me. Yeah, I guess I don't have much more to add than that. I just kind of tuned in, heard the net, and so I didn't get to hear what was going on before that. But that's my 2 cents. I will send it back to you, Neil. This is KD2 KJU.
Right, Jed. Basically, we're just talking about science in Hollywood, when they get it right, when they get it wrong, and the old movies where they really didn't know enough to get it right or wrong, but sometimes those movies hold up and are still entertaining, and sometimes they're ridiculously funny. So that's basically what it was. I don't know if you have anything to add after that.
KD2 KJU. Well, currently my favorite old movie that's not new is Starship Troopers, just because it's so ridiculous, and I don't think it can be topped. But I will send it back to Ned.
No, that's fine. That's one of those movies I've never seen all the way through, beginning to end. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. But The one that I always think of that comes up quite often is Forbidden Planet with Walter Pidgeon and Leslie Nielsen. Robbie the Robot. Great movie. Interesting stuff. Walter Pidgeon, just classic acting from him, and Leslie Nielsen showing us all where William Shatner got his acting style. So, great stuff, though. All right, Mike, M&R. Any examples for our subjects tonight?
Well, like I was trying to think of the name of the movie, but you said it was Frequency. I enjoyed the storyline of that movie, but like you said, there was no call signs. He didn't even have a license, but it was kind of interesting, the time factor and all that he was actually talking to his father. I do watch a lot of NCIS, and a lot of the science in that seems correct. There's some stuff that I yell at the screen and say that would never happen. There's no way, especially when they're talking about car stuff. Abby doesn't know what she's talking about on some of that stuff, but it's kind of weird how what really is going on, and they explain it totally wrong. As far as Tim Allen's show, Last Man Standing, he had a setup in his office, and he had a setup downstairs in his house, and his daughter Eve was on the radio one night talking to the one boyfriend there. And I don't know. I don't think Eve has her license. I don't know. But if you look up Tim Allen's call sign, which is Kilo Kilo 6 Oscar Tango Delta, the name comes up Tim Dick. And it's in North Hollywood, California. That's where he lives. So obviously he's going to set it up kind of weird because of who he is, and everybody's going to look him up and find out where he lives. So he is in North Hollywood, but who knows if the street address is right. But there was also another episode of NCIS. Let me drop. There was also another episode of NCIS that was all about ham radio. The guy that got killed or whatever, he was a ham. And the one agent supposedly was a ham, and he got all the guys' radios and everything. There was a Kenwood in there. I tried to pay attention to what he had, but I couldn't get it all. One of them, I believe, was a Kenwood, and that's what he was talking on because he was trying to get a hold of the people that this guy talks to. So the only thing, he got on the radio and was yelling CQ, CQ, and basically that's the only thing that he said that was correct. The call sign, there was numbers, there was way too many numbers and some letters, and they all had handles like it was CB. He was the Timinator. And, there was another guy, his handle basically was his name, and I forget what it was, but they get it wrong a lot, but sometimes it's right. I mean, Last Man Standing, that did seem pretty correct because they are all hams. So I'll turn it back to you, Neil. KD2 MNR.
W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Thanks, Mike. And, I think I remember that episode of NCIS, and I think I remember screaming at the television. None of this is correct. But, yeah, it does happen. So, all right. Thanks. And Tom, into FCC. Your contributions for tonight, they don't have to be about ham radio.
Good evening, and to FCC. Yeah, I mean, all interesting stuff. Like Star Trek with the communicators, we often thought, how much power can you be running, and what kind of antenna is the Enterprise to be able to pick up these communicators from on the planet's surface up into space. And of course the transporters. That's an interesting theory. I've read some theory about transporters and reconstructing items from one place to another. Let's see. I had another thought too. Yeah, Frequency. I thought it was a cool movie. I like the equipment. It didn't have a lot to do with ham radio, other than he was talking through time. And the movies where they change history, I always find it interesting, like the Butterfly Effect and Frequency. That things happen in the past that change the present. I always kind of like those kind of movies. And the other thing, one of the original Star Treks, they went through some time portal, and they sort of changed history. So Spock went out and bought some tubes and some other stuff, what he called stone knives and bearskins, and made sort of a computer, so that they could look at what they recorded on their tricorder. So back in the 30s, you're going to get enough components to make like a computer. Interesting stuff. Yeah, and the movie The Martian, that was some interesting stuff. Concept of surviving on another planet with the resources you got. Growing potatoes with the human waste and making water out of hydrogen and oxygen. So this is N2FCC, back tonight.
I'm endeavoring, ma'am, to construct a mnemonic memory circuit using stone knives and bearskins. Great line. I love the equipment. It's got the Jacob's ladder going. This stuff right out of like an old Peter Lorre movie. Good stuff. Well, thanks, Tom. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much when you look at a TV show like Star Trek and everything that came after the original series and everything that it evolved into, and the canon that grew up around the story. So they tried to start explaining the science of Star Trek, even though it's not real science. It's Star Trek science. And it's interesting because there's stuff in the original series that doesn't fit with the scientific canon of Star Trek, like warp theory. Let me drop. So when they start talking about, how warp works and the definition in the later shows, what you learn is that warp 10 is theoretically impossible with the type of propulsion they're using, I guess. You can get as close to it as you can, and there's a logarithmic effect where as you get closer to 10, it's larger jumps in speed, but they can never actually obtain warp 10. And they even cover that exact theory of what were to happen if you did obtain that in Voyager. But if you watch the original series, there's definitely shows where through some outside influence, they travel, faster than that. And what I always found really funny with Trek is that in some of the later shows, they would sometimes write an episode that attempts to explain a departure from the canon from an earlier show. Let me drop. One of my favorites is in the Star Trek series Enterprise, which is kind of like a prequel. They attempt to explain why the Klingons in the original series look different than the Klingons that came later through a whole genetic arc. It's really interesting. And they talk about, they accidentally create this pandemic in Klingon science, and the cure for it, which the doctor from Enterprise comes up with, is a genetic cure, and it causes generations of Klingons to look like humans without the forehead ridges. So there's a number of points in the series where they try to explain away some of the errors between the canon and the original show. Cool stuff. Let me just throw it back to Tom for comment on that.
Yeah, 2FCC. Yeah, I pretty much didn't watch any of the other Star Trek under the original. My other comment was, we're talking about CSI and some of the stuff on CSI, like, we found this, just Joe Smith. Let's run through the database. And, within seconds, they have a match. That is a powerful computer. There's no way that they could be searching these databases that quick. So this is back to net.
Oh yeah, I agree. Those of you who watch, anything that involves, a security camera shot or some kind of photo that was taken from, and the word they keep using, enhance. Those of us that work with digital photography in any kind of way know that some of the stuff they're doing is definitely impossible. I know the one primetime show I have maybe only watched about 20 minutes of in all of the seasons that it's been on, because it just makes me ill, is the modern Hawaii Five-0. I can't watch that show. And one of the first times I watched it, I had it on for about 5 minutes, and one of the female detectives, or whatever she is in the show, looks at the other guy and says, "Hold on, I'll Bing that for you." And I just, nobody says that. Nobody uses Bing anyway, but nobody says that. Great stuff. Jim, KD2VAH, what have you got for us on this topic tonight?
I'm not a big TV watcher. And by that, I mean I haven't physically watched TV inside my house in probably 10 years. I mean, I literally shut off my cable that long ago. But that movie Frequency, here's where my nerd part shows, okay? I've probably watched it 20 times since seeing it. I mean, I had a friend actually get it for me so I could watch it 20 times. I love the movie. I know there's 1,000 things wrong with it, but I love the movie. I don't really watch a movie and critique it so much as far as, oh, that ain't possible. Watch a Vin Diesel movie where they turned him into, I don't know, a weapon or something with nanobots in his body that can heal everything and make him whatever. I watch movies for entertainment. I mean, if I really want scientific things, I will watch Stephen Hawking. I will watch, that type of documentary. I'm more of I watch them for entertainment. And it's funny because the movies I watch are old movies. The last movie I just watched the other night before the flood was The Eiger Sanction with Clint Eastwood. It was a great movie. Back to net.
W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Yeah, Jim, I'll agree with you, because, we talk about this stuff, and I brought this subject tonight, but I am not a Hollywood science snob. I will not go in that direction. And if you do look at these lists I was talking about, a couple of movies that consistently show up on the bad science list. Armageddon, always on that list, always. I guess there's a lot of really awful science in that movie. But you know something? I like the movie. It's entertaining. The Day After Tomorrow. Same thing. The climatologists, meteorologists, really, really can't stand that movie. But it's entertaining, and it works. What's kind of funny about that movie is the science behind it, and science in quotes, is based on a book that was, I think, co-written by Art Bell and somebody else, who claimed that that what happens in that movie is not only possible, but that it happened once before. But there's a lot of stuff like that out there. Movies that probably weren't particularly well thought out. And I will comment that, as an IT professional, when for many years, when movies would talk about computers, they would get it oh so wrong. Some of the stuff that these people are doing and the way that they would enhance, whatever they were doing on the screen and just some of the stuff that they were doing on computers was just so incredibly awful and so wrong, that it was hilarious. Today, because, it's just such a normal part of life, and, 7-year-old kids banging out HTML code and writing their own web pages, and it you don't see a lot of the misses that you did years ago with the computing side of it. But oh yeah, there were definitely some awful, awful, awful takes on computing. W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday night Science and Technology Net. Let me drop.
Hackers.
Good and bad there, by the way. Good and bad. It's an interesting movie, but yeah, the actual computer sequences are ridiculous, where they're showing what's going on the screen. There's some others where, a computer guy will find himself yelling at the TV. There was a movie with Sandra Bullock called The Net, which was absolutely awful, where they just, nothing about it was correct. But there's some that do get some of it right. There was Will Smith, Enemy of the State, where quite a bit of the technology in that movie was possible and was correct. There's certainly stuff out there that works. But, one of the really funny things that you'll run into, let me drop, is when you look at movies where they're dealing with something that should have a brand, sometimes it won't. And it's because they don't want to pay for it. So you'll see a lot of MacBooks in the movies with a sticker over the Apple. That happens because they don't want to have to, pay for using it or acknowledge that they endorsed a particular type of thing. But one of the funny ones is when they're talking about social media and a lot of TV shows and movies, they'll refer to Facebook as my face or Spacebook, or they come up with crazy names for these things so that they don't have to actually say the name of something that exists. Funny stuff. Jim, K2BHM, any wrap-up comments on the first round?
Jim, K2BHM here. Let me throw an interesting little twist into the conversation. What are the serious drawbacks of this trash technology? And I say that because I was over at a friend's shop years ago, and one of his friends came in, and he worked in the DA's office in Rensselaer County. And we got chatting and so forth, and I mentioned CSI and the errors in their science. And he was like, oh my God, you would not believe it. Before we can see the jury, we have to go through a 2-hour anti-CSI lecture. They think that people walk down the street and the DNA's flowing all over the place. You squirrel a pair of tweezers, pick it up, stick it in the machine, and 10 minutes you know who the killer is. And if you don't have that DNA evidence, they don't want to hear it. So I got a big kick out of that. Anyhow, back to you, K2BHM.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we can come up with some examples where Hollywood or TV land has caused people to believe things that don't actually happen the way that they do. It's certainly a thing. All right. Is there anybody else at the end of the first round here that would like to check into the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net? Please come now. All right. It sounds fine. And like I said, I wanted to keep things short tonight so we can go back through again on another round. So Jim, K2BHM, anything else to add?
No, that was it. K2BHM.
All right, Jim, thanks and good night. I'll catch you during the week at some point. All right, Matt, KB2GGF, anything to add for our final round here?
I've been practicing the sciences of electrobiology and chemical galvanism. Yeah, there's a lot of science in the movies. Frankenstein, your mention of the Jacob's Ladder made me think of that. And all the miniaturization movies like Dr. Cyclops or The Fantastic Voyage. Just really, really way out science, or so-called science. But hey, very entertaining. And on Forbidden Planet, you forgot to mention Shelley Fabre, the lovely Shelley Fabre, who I think was 17 years old when she made that movie. Pretty remarkable. Monsters from the id. Back to Ned, KB2GGF.
James Bond. Definitely a good source for this stuff. And how many things out of the old Bond movies actually, happened technology-wise, and how many of them didn't? One of those interesting. If you could sit there and analyze all of the Bond technology. Obviously some of it's easy. Yeah, we could definitely make an Aston Martin with an ejector seat. I'm sure it could be done. Whether or not we could have Pierce Brosnan's car that appeared to be invisible, that's a stretch. Although, the explanation of the technology does seem like it could someday be possible. But there's definitely a lot of issues with the physics of that. All right. Jed, KD2KJU, anything else for tonight?
My goodness, the Star Trek talk. I guess I shouldn't say which ones I do and don't like, but I would say that a lot of those technologies, even the pads that they have, they do some close-ups in DS9, and it just looks like it kind of looks like a digital readout from what I would think would be a cash register or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what they were going for with those things, but I don't know. I had to watch. I was getting babysat by my grandmother, and that's what she had on all the time. And my goodness, was I so excited to see those things. I had a lot of fun watching Star Trek. I didn't really understand it, and I didn't watch it for quite a few years. Until I just got back into it and started watching it again. But there's definitely a lot of things, and that I'm just like, what the heck are you talking about? A lot of the wording of some of the scientific stuff. It just doesn't seem to make sense. It's like someone just threw a bunch of words together, and it actually makes me laugh, and that's half the reason I enjoy the show. But I will send it back to you, Neil. This is KD2KJU.
W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Thanks, Jed. And, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. And one of the things that I remember reading about, which I thought was pretty cool, how they did manage to pull this off, was that when they were trying to figure out the show Enterprise, they had an interesting task. They had to figure out how to make it look like it took place before the original series, but at the same time to make it look like it was futuristic to us, present time. Because obviously some things that the original series, came up with in the 60s might look a little dated compared to other science fiction shows. They needed to make the original Enterprise somehow look older and more steampunk-like, but honor the technology that had come out since we made the original show. So interesting take on it, and it is pretty cool the way they pulled it off, because it does have that old kind of steampunk look to it while being modern at the same time. So I think they pulled it off. All right. Let's see. Up next, Mike, KD2MNR, who is up later than normal because I assume you're not working tomorrow.
Yes, that is correct. I'm not working tomorrow. I was working on the bathroom today, and I'll be working on the bathroom again tomorrow. Yeah, I really don't have much to add. All that. I'm not into Star Trek, Star Wars. You know, I watched Star Trek as a kid, but I don't remember much about it because I really wasn't interested in it. But you know, just I remember the bad acting on everybody's part. So you know, and that's about it. So I'll turn it back to you, and I'll listen out. KD2MNR. Thanks, Neil.
All right, Mike. And yeah, Star Wars made one of those bad science lists I was looking at. You were talking about the sound that the ships make. That, you know, they can hear the difference, you know, between a TIE fighter and another ship. And yeah, you don't hear in space. No, not really. All right. Tom, into FCC. Comments for the final round here.
Good evening again, all, into FCC. A couple of things. Back to the Future, the Flux Capacitor. Fascinating. Flux Capacitor. So it's, you know, it's something that they tend to invent to make stuff work. And my other thought is there was one, and I think it was Star Trek Next Generation. But it was interesting. They encountered this probe, which I think Picard went into a coma for like the whole show. And what they did is that there was a society that was dying, so they put basically an essence of their entire society in this probe. And when it encountered the Enterprise, it somehow got into Picard's brain, and he fantasized about an entire life on this planet. And that was the planet's attempt to not have this civilization die by sort of implanting thoughts in somebody else's head. So I always thought that was an interesting concept. But yeah, I was just thinking about the flux capacitor. Done to FCC, back tonight.
Thanks, Tom. Excellent episode. I know my brother always talks about that one as being one of his favorites. Is that so? Next Generation, if you're well versed on it, is that your favorite episode, or do you have a favorite?
Once again, didn't watch too many of them, but you know, at the end of the episode, you know, when it all came out, that was like sort of a dream implanted in his head. So yeah, it's probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that one is excellent. I definitely have, you know, some that rise above the rest. There is an episode where Data is dreaming, and somehow, you know, his dreams are about and intertwined with issues they're having with the ship, and it's a great episode because the dreams are just so incredibly wacky, and they're funny. And there's a scene when he's not dreaming in one part where they decide he agrees that he should go to the brig and you know, stay there so that he doesn't damage anything and or hurt anybody. So he has a cat on the Enterprise, a pet cat, Spot, and he asks Worf, the Klingon, to take care of his cat while he is in the brig, and he's handing him the cat, and he tells him, you know, he eats feline supplement number 23 in the food replicator, and oh, please talk to him, tell him he's a good cat, a pretty cat. And Worf just makes this face and says, I will feed him. Great stuff. Jim, KD2VAH, comments on the final round.
Well, I've heard a lot of Star Trek. Let me drop. Because I certainly didn't count the two before pushing that button. Anyway, but I've heard a lot of Star Trek references, and I love Star Trek. Hate Star Wars, but love Star Trek. But I'm reminded of an episode, I couldn't tell you which one, but somebody out there could, where Spock was telling the captain that the higher the life form, the more need for play.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stuck with me. I mean, you'll see even wolves who have a heck of an existence, okay, play. And they're not exactly the highest of life forms, but they're smart. They're extremely smart. They're just not on our level, I assume. And I don't want to be arrogant. But I believe that. That's the same reason I think of dreams. Dreams are ways of working things out. I mean, and we all enjoy dreaming. I mean, unless you had a bad dream, that happens too. But my point of it is it's entertainment, and we need entertainment. And I don't rightly care. Like I said, if it's exact, I don't care. If the movie entertains me, like the one, I can't remember, you just said it, the one where they go and drill that meteor that's going to wreck the world. Oh, why can't I think of it? Okay, whatever. Anyway, I love that movie. It was a great movie. It was a fantastic movie. Anyway, I'll drop it back to you and leave it for tonight. But the more higher the life form, the more need for play. And I do believe that's true.
The episode is Shore Leave. Yeah, that's where they find a planet that just starts creating things that people think about. And the good and bad of that. So, but yes, that's where that came from. It is an interesting thing to say. So Armageddon was the movie you're talking about. And, on the scientifically accurate list, which was interesting, was another movie about something hitting the Earth. Deep Impact, where it's a comet. And that one was actually on the scientifically accurate list, which was interesting. So there's definitely the good and bad of both sides of that. And, if you want to look at some of these in the order that they came out, I'll mention some real quick here. Independence Day, Armageddon, The Day After Tomorrow, and 2012. What do all those movies have in common? Anybody?
The end of civilization as we know it.
Something else, though. Something more specific. That's all right. I know we don't have a whole lot of movie nerds on here tonight, like myself. And I'm not even that big of a movie nerd. But they were all produced by Roland Emmerich, who, this is his thing. This is the kind of movie he does. And I'll warn everybody, there's a new one coming. I think it's called Moonfall or Moonrise. But anyway, it's in the year 20 whatever, the moon will come to us. And it's a movie story about the moon hitting the Earth. I can't wait to read about the science in this one. All right. Are there any last-minute check-ins? Anybody who wants to pile on this topic before we shut it down, please come in. All right. Nothing heard. Jim, K2BHM. Any wrap-up here from you?
Geez, if the moon's orbit does start collapsing and it's going to imminently impact the Earth, we could do moon bounce with an HT. Save a lot of power. Anyhow, that's it. Have a good one, K2BHM.
Yeah, it does bring a whole new definition of moon bounce. Yeah, which there's another one popped in my head I'll leave everybody with. Space, 1999. Martin Landau. Yeah, where the moon leaves Earth's orbit. That wouldn't go well for the Earth. We'd have some problems with tidal forces and some other things. So, but it's just science. Let me drop. You have been listening to or participating in the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net on 146.805, the repeater of the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club. We meet here every Sunday night at 8 p.m. for this Science and Technology Net. And once again, I will mention again, we will not be meeting, or at least I will not be here for the next 2 Sunday nights. So someone feel free to stand in and do a little quick discussion or net, but that's fine. We'll pick up again when I get back from my vacation. So let me drop. You're welcome to participate in the other regularly scheduled nets that occur on this repeater. Every morning at 8:35 a.m., a host of OMARC characters hosts the 8:35 on the 8:05. A net mostly hosted by and started by Paul, AC2UQ. We come on at 8:35 and we have a round-robin, non-directed net discussing what's going on with us and sharing stories and happenings in our lives. Paul started the net so that we could remain social during the COVID pandemic, and we could make sure that everybody was okay, because not all of us were okay. We kind of missed that social activity. So every morning, 8:35 on the 8:05. Let me drop. Every evening at 6:30 is the 6:30 check-in net. Very similar to the 8:35 net, but a directed net hosted by a rotating crew of OMARC members. Check in at 6:30. Tell us how your day went. Let us know if you need anything, you have any issues you're trying to resolve, and we'll see what we can do. Every Thursday night at 8 p.m., Dave, K2JLV, our club president, hosts the Thursday Night Technical Net, where we discuss a technical topic, usually ham radio related, but not always. Dave asks for check-ins, see if anybody has an idea for a topic or a problem that they're trying to solve in ham radio or related technologies. If a topic does not gel in the first round, Dave spins the topic wheel and comes up with one for us. Definitely a great net. Runs several rounds during the night, and I've heard them solve several problems for people and get really deep into some technical topics. So, great net. All right, and of course, this net, which I mentioned first, 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. And you have been listening to the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. If you would like more information about our club, the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club, you can find that at omarcclub.org. omarcclub.org. You do not need to be a member to participate in any of these nets that I've mentioned. However, we encourage you to join us and become a member. Please check out our website. I am now closing the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net and returning the repeater to its regular use. And I am ending the YouTube stream now.